Hello.
Hi V, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Donna?
I'm doing good. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're so far apart. So, I mean, it's always good to see you.
We say this in every single podcast, guys, and we are right next to each other. But without further ado, welcome to another podcast, another episode of Approaching Your Future with your host Dana Khan and Victor Rivero, where we take steps forward towards your goals. And today we are going to be discussing a pretty cool topic because we have an amazing special guest, which we'll be introducing in a bit. Um, but today we're going to be talking about international talent and studying abroad with Rebeca Assis. And international talent and studying abroad, this series comes as a part of a series of episodes that we've done with different staff at Approach and different people that have had experience both working abroad, studying abroad, or being international and coming to the US to work, and a bit sharing of that experience with us and how that goes. But let's please introduce Rebecca. We're super excited to have her here.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone.
How are
How
you
are you guys?
doing? Doing great. Doing great. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
no, thank you for accepting this invitation. And
Yes, we love having you here.
yes, we're actually really excited to be talking to you and then go over a bit of your experience overseas. And just for a lot, I mean, a lot of the people that watches us, student or not, there are a lot of people in Brazil, and that might be really interesting for people in Brazil that are, just willing to really start abroad, expand
Yeah,
their horizons and adventure themselves in different countries. I think that
definitely.
definitely would be really, really interesting. And
Yeah.
I will, and it's Rebeca de Assis.
You mean the correct pronunciation?
See,
Yes.
Is Rebeca de Assis, I guess we
de
could say.
Assis. Okay.
Rebecca de Assis. Perfect.
Yes. Awesome.
Awesome. All right, Rebecca. So let's get started. I mean, first and foremost, we would love to get to know a bit more about you. Give us in a scope. Who is Rebecca? Why do you think we brought you here? You know.
I have no idea. This is such a hard question, because it's so hard to talk about ourselves. Like, what should I say? Well, my name, you just introduced me, and I'm next month I'll be 29. Yay, almost 30.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and yeah, well, I'm currently living in Brazil. I'm Brazilian. My hometown is called Belo Horizonte. And yeah, I guess what should I be saying about me? Well,
I have a
my
good
major.
question.
Okay, guide me through this.
Yeah, please. I have a good question because you already gave us a few. I mean, Rebecca here already gave us like a good amount of information that I am super curious about. First and foremost,
Okay.
you're from Brazil. Tell me how you know
Yes.
English. How do you get to learn English?
Okay. Really, really like long story, but I guess it always started when I was around like 14, 15. I just I was crazy about American TV series. So I used to just binge watch them, like really so many of them. And I guess that's how my interest in English sort of started. And yeah, the more I watched, I feel like the more my level would improve. And also because I mean, I have always been interested in Asian culture. So when I was like really young, I started like reading mangas, like it's like Japanese cartoons,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So yeah, but then back then in 2000 and I don't know, really long time ago, all of them, I mean most of them at least, the most like interesting ones, they were all I think in English. So I was kind of like forced to kind of like translate, if I wanted to understand the content. So I guess both like my interest in English started like back then, like because I really wanted to understand what I was reading, like for mangas, and also because of American TV series. So that's kind of started. And I also like always felt like I wanted to travel, even though that wasn't kind of like something that my family could afford, but I knew that at some point in the future I would love to just go somewhere. So then that's when I started to kind of like work harder in terms of trying to learn English. So yeah.
That
That is
is
incredible.
incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible, honestly. And like, I'm just, how did you translate? I'm gonna throw questions at you, by the way.
Okay,
How did,
okay, okay, sounds
how,
good.
how would you translate like the TV shows and the mangas? Like, was it like just normal Google Translate, or was it like you were genuinely like trying to understand the English and then being like, what does this mean in Portuguese? Like, I want to know more.
I guess both. I mean, because my formal, I would say, English education was all like in our public school, so it was like very basic stuff. And so, but we had textbooks, right? So I used to kind of like cover like grammar and just phrase structures with textbooks, and then vocabulary with other things, like by translating the words that I didn't know, like in mangas and stuff. So I feel like I could understand most of the grammar, but vocabulary was the problem. So because that was the problem, I could kind of use Google Translator. But I mean, it was really bad actually, because back then Google Translator wasn't as good as it is today, right? Because nowadays you can translate like full text and it comes out pretty decent, I think. And but back then it wasn't the case. So I suffered a lot. I mean, it was actually, it's funny because many times I figured like I thought a specific word was one meaning, but then like months later I would just find out like it wasn't that, at least not in that context, it wasn't correct. So yeah, yeah. And I feel like the TV series, it's funny because in the beginning I used to watch them all like with Portuguese subtitles. And then Gilmore Girls, right? You guys, yeah,
For
Yes.
that's
sure, for sure.
my all-time favorite TV series. I think I've watched it at least, I'm not joking, I've watched all the 8 seasons at least 10 times at the very least.
Oh my God.
I
But
love
it's
it
worth
so
it.
much.
It's worth
Yeah,
it.
right. I
Yeah,
love like how
100%.
their dialogue is just so like fast and sarcastic, and I think it's just so interesting. So in the beginning I used to watch it just like in Portuguese, and then I started adding English subtitles, and then without subtitles, because I feel like the type of like vocabulary that he has, and the type of jokes is just a bit complicated to understand at first, right? But then yeah, that helped me practice a lot, and also to kind of like get in a more natural way, like how how the structure of the language works. You know what I mean? So even though Google Translator helped me out a lot, but also the exposure I feel like to the language, like on a daily basis, also helped to kind of like um, teach me in a more natural way how I should speak in a more, I don't know, more structured way, I think. So yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, like, so one of the first things that came to my head, did you use that on your thesis, like how you've learned languages throughout your life? Because that's definitely very special.
In my thesis, you mean for my
Yeah.
master's?
Yeah.
No, no, it
No,
was a very different
it
topic.
was a very
Yeah.
different topic, but it was something
Yeah.
related to education, right?
It wasn't like really,
Oh
it
my
has
gosh.
nothing to do with education.
What it had to do?
Oh my goodness, this is so random. But my thesis topic was, brace yourselves, how PKOs, which is peacekeeping operations from the United Nations, can help governments to prevent the recruitment of children as soldiers, like in their national armies. That was my thesis topic.
What? Wait. So, okay, I actually do want to get into this like in depth. But before we get into this, give us like the bridge of what takes place for you to be in Brazil, and then from what I understand, this thesis that we're talking about, it's presented in South Korea, correct? In the
Yeah, that's
university.
correct. Yeah.
So, how do you? What is the process of being in Brazil and then like going to study in South Korea and finish your thesis there? What takes place in that time?
Wow. Guys, that's a very long story. So I'll try to just make it short, giving you like the
You want
main.
to share whatever you want to share. If it's like for example, like why did you decide South Korea? I would love to know
Okay.
that because it's a super interesting choice.
Actually, I didn't decide really for South Korea. So basically, I knew that I wanted to go abroad at some point in my life, but because of my family kind of like financial situation, that wasn't really like the case for us. I'm sorry, hair was in my face. So it wasn't really like a possibility for us. So I just kept studying on my own and just, lived life. And after I graduated high school, I had to choose like what I would do in college, right? And I remember that international relations was one of the options. Actually, it was a course that I got to know about through a really good friend who studied with me in high school. So he wanted to study international relations as well. So I just started researching a bit more, and then I decided to kind of like apply for it. And you guys probably heard about it, but I think we still have like a scholarship from Brazilian government called ProUni, right? So I actually got 100% like a full coverage scholarship to study international relations.
Wow, that's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm so thankful because if I had to pay for it, like my family couldn't afford it at that time. So I started studying at in one of our universities called PUC Minas. So yeah, I started studying, and my English also kept like improving because most of our reading materials they were in English, right? Because it's international relations, so you're kind of like forced to read a lot in English. And I remember getting an internship opportunity in our Office of International Affairs from our university. So when I was working there, I got to know about like different exchange programs opportunities because it had to be like full coverage because again I couldn't afford going abroad, like paying for it. And I remember applying like to go to China once and I didn't get it, but after a while another scholarship opportunity came up and it was to South Korea. Like it was for an exchange program, like a 1 year long exchange program. And I mean, I had a thing for Asia, right? Like I told you guys about the manga stuff. So
Yeah.
I was into Japan, yeah, and then after I tried to go to China, it didn't work. But then I this opportunity to go to Korea came up. It was a 1 year long exchange program, full like everything covered for as well, like plane tickets, all the studies and everything, and I got it. So I remember like from the time I actually got you're accepted, you can come until the time of departure, I had like 2 weeks. And I didn't even have a passport with me. I didn't know how to, make a passport. So I just did everything I could and then I just went. I was super scared. I was like 19 back then. It was in 2013. Uh, but yeah, and then that was the first time I went to Korea, and it was amazing. I mean, there's just so much to talk about if we're going to talk about Korea. But then I just knew, like, after coming to Brazil again, like to finish my college degree, I figured that I would love to go to Korea again, like to do my master's. And long story short, after a really long time I applied again like for another scholarship also from the Korean government. I don't know if I mentioned this the first time, but the first scholarship I got was from the Korean government, and the second one was from the Korean government as well. And fortunately I got it again and I went again, and yeah.
Wait, so you got 3 scholarships in total or 2?
Actually I got four.
Oh
Wow.
my
because
gosh.
because after my first time in Korea, I came back to Brazil and I was like finishing my degree, And then another like scholarship opportunity to go to China. And this time, yeah, China again for a summer program came up. It was a partnership between, Santander, like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spanish bank. Yeah, they have a partnership with Emirates, the airline company, and they do a lot of things like for university students. And one of these programs is called Top China, and it's to spend like 3 weeks in China. Like 100 Brazilian students, they go to China for 3 weeks, and 100 Chinese students they come to Brazil for 3 weeks. So we do it like that. And I applied and I got it again, and I went to China as well for like three
Wow.
weeks, and then to Korea. So yeah, four.
That's
That's
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
That no, that's
Oh
amazing. And then like I also have another question. So
yes,
how so I know that like the ProUni and there are different programs in Brazil,
yes,
such as like there's also Ciências Sem Fronteiras,
yeah,
which is like
exactly.
Science Without Borders, which is like a
Yeah.
program from the past, and which I mean, whoever is watching this, if you're from Brazil, you probably know, but if you're not, it's mind blowing because it's amazing how the Brazilian government, at
Yeah.
times, try to give these opportunities. Those were amazing things, and I know a lot of people that took
Yeah.
advantage. But here's the thing: I know a lot of people that went to Europe. I know some people that went to the United States. How did you get to Asia? I mean, like I know that you've always been really into the Asian culture, more
Yeah.
specifically. I know that you've really liked the Japanese mangas, but like
Yeah.
when you were in your application process, like how did they find out that that was your place? Did you have to say anything?
Yes, yes. I don't know. I mean, why Asia? To be honest, I don't know how to answer that question. Really, I never really felt like going to Europe. To be very honest, I always felt like I want to go somewhere different. I guess, and with the at that time actually I didn't have like much exposure to Korean culture. I know nowadays like super hot. Like everybody knows everything about K dramas, K pop, and we have Netflix and all those things. But back then, it wasn't like that. I mean, I think that by the time I went to Korea for the first time, Korean dramas they were getting like they were still getting famous, at least like in the western part of the world. So yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. I just feel like I kind of knew what I was getting myself into because I thought I had an idea about like what Asia was like. Like again, like this kind of people who think, oh, Europe, all one thing. Oh, Asia, all one thing. It's definitely not. So yeah, I think I just wrote that I was passionate about Asia, and I actually by that time I feel like I was on my application letter, I feel like I wrote way more about the school in itself, and about the courses and about how studying international relations there would help me more than, being the country itself, if it makes any
Yeah.
sense.
No, that makes total sense, of course. And I think that's super cool. And honestly, like it must be like, of course, a balance between the opportunity that arises and the opportunity to go to somewhere that you've loved and you've been wanting to go for a while. So
Yeah,
like that
exactly.
mixture is it's like that's like the gold pot, right? The golden pot.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really cool, Rebecca. And so after you go, so now, okay, so you've done exchange programs already, like a few different exchange programs, the first one while in
Yeah.
college,
Yeah.
then in your graduate degree, and then during summer as well in China. So
Yeah.
what, like when living in Korea, what is like the culture shock component that you felt like, were there many international students? I do wonder if the Korean government does like help with that. Were there a lot of international students in Korea?
Yeah, yeah. The scholarship I got, for instance, like is one of the biggest ones I think in the world. I mean, the scope is huge, like they provide like I told you guys, they pay for everything. Like plane tickets, they pay for your tuition, they give you monthly allowance, they pay even for your health insurance. So it's pretty amazing. Like, and they do it for developing countries. I think now they might start opening, like I think they start opening it for like Europe and the US, but as far as I know, at least like a few years, up until a few years before, it was just to developing countries. But they do it a lot. Like, and they have, I feel like it's kind of like 500 spots per year, like with these kind of scholarships,
Wow.
plus the other types of scholarships that their universities, like Korean universities, are encouraged by the government to do by themselves, like, you know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like they try to encourage it a lot.
That's very cool. And did you feel like a difference, I guess, like with yourself and with how you related to the culture the first time you went to Korea and the second time around? Like, was there a big difference?
Definitely. Wow. If we're gonna talk about culture shock, I mean, we could talk like for hours
Please
because
go
it's just
on.
it's just so different. I swear. Well, to start with, like, weather, right? Like, you guys are Brazilians, or you've been in Brazil, you know that we have, like, our temperatures, like, they vary, but they don't vary that much depending on where you are in Brazil. But in Korea, they have very, like, four very separate seasons, and I wasn't used to that. So first time I went to Korea, I mean, things are start getting funny and, like, kind of embarrassing starting from the airport, because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had never traveled by myself, anywhere, let alone, abroad. So I remember when I was doing, like, a connection in, it was Heathrow. Yeah, it was London. So I was in the airport, and I got off the plane, and I didn't follow people directly, to the terminal. I went into the bathroom first. And when I came out, there was no one there. So I just kind of, like, kept going by myself. And I ended up kind of like in the lobby kind of room, and there was just like a glass like wall, and nowhere to go. So I had two choices: just to go back to the plane, the place where I got off from the plane, or to just stay there. And I remember that I got so desperate because, I mean, I couldn't even think about, like, just reading what was around me. I remember that the first person that passed by me, I just grabbed the guy and I told him, like, my full life story, and just like to ask him, where should I go? I almost cried. And he was like, he realized that, I mean, back then I was not comfortable at all talking in English yet. Like, speaking English was, like, really hard for me. And I remember that he looked at me. He didn't laugh. He was very polite. He didn't laugh. I even showed him my plane ticket. That is so funny. But then he told me, "You see this glass wall?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "This is a subway. So if you wait here, a subway will come, and then you can just get in, and it will take you to the main terminal where you can see all the flight information and everything." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." So, I mean, it started from that point. I knew that it would be just hard. And it actually was. I mean, in Korea, like, the weather is just so different. Like I was telling in the beginning, and when I left Brazil, it was summer, like, it was super hot, and in Korea it was really, really cold. So getting there, like, at first, I think for the first three days, I think, in a row, I was just sick, just throwing up, just in bed. I couldn't really, get used to the temperature, because it was even snowing, and I wasn't prepared for that, really. So that was really hard. The food, I mean, have you guys heard about kimchi?
I love kimchi. It's one of my favorite things.
Big
Yeah,
fans
right?
here.
Guys, kimchi is amazing. But in Korea, like, this is my perception as a foreigner, first arriving in Korea. Because kimchi is everywhere. And I mean, I'm just saying kimchi, but there are a lot of other, fermented kind of foods, like pickled foods, like kimchi is. So when is like, because it's cold, everything's like, everywhere is closed, right? So all the smells, they are kept, like, really, inside, and it gets, like, stronger and stronger. So I remember feeling like smelling like kimchi everywhere, and like that kind of fermented smell everywhere, like, especially in elevators. I have this, like, memory of just smelling kimchi everywhere. And because I was feeling sick, because of all the, like, weather change and everything, it took me, like, some time to get used to that. But yeah, foods, I mean, Korea has, like, total different, like, type of, like, cuisine, I would say, than, like, Brazilian, so they have a lot of soups, even cold soups, which I was definitely not used to. The rice, the type of rice, I mean, it doesn't have any seasoning to it. You have to add the seasoning after, and it's, very sticky and
Yeah.
soft. and a lot of side dishes. Like we don't have that style of food here, right? So yeah, it took me a while to get used to the food. And also, and I think that was the hardest part, like how to interact with people properly, because
Yes.
that is super hard. Because for me, I mean, maybe you guys can't see a bit because of my personality, but I'm like super bubbly, super happy. If I see you, I will just hug you, and that's super normal for me. And I feel like for many Brazilians, it's just our culture, how it goes here. But in Korea, that's not how things are done. So like I remember just if you meet someone for the first time, even if it's just a girl, like you just want to hug her, and I would do that like at first, and she would just be like, oh, what are you doing, like don't touch me. But not because they don't want you to hug them, it's just because it's different, right?
Different
So
culture.
yeah, yeah. Like you don't really shake hands with people, you bow to people. And if you shake hands, you should use both hands, like, because otherwise it's like kind of like rude, kind of disrespectful, especially if it's someone older.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So either you use both hands like this, or you have to at least, I don't know if you guys can see it well, but you have to at least put one hand like, you have to show that you're using both hands in a way. So you just shake hands like this, or you just shake hands like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, like kind of interacting with people. And also because in Korea, because of the hierarchy that they have, like is very strong in the country. So, and it's something that comes back from like Confucianism, the influence that it had in Korea and in other Asian countries as well. But then you don't really call older people, or just not older people, just anyone older than you, really, by their name. You cannot call like a friend's
Yeah.
mom by her name. Sometimes you don't even know their name because you have to call them by their title, right? So that can get really confusing sometimes. And that was a culture shock for me. But I'm just talking about like stuff that were hard, I think, like to get used to. But also many other things that were like amazing, like transportation. Guys, transportation in Korea is just like heaven, really. I mean, I've heard that like in the US, I know they like public transportation, I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's not that like common, right? People mostly they drive and they have their cars,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Some
Yeah.
places. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but like in Korea, I feel like even people who drive and who have cars, they don't really use it as much because it's just so convenient. Like traffic, I mean, subways and subway lines, everything is just so organized. And all bus stops, they have like names. And if you enter in the bus, like you have like names of every bus stop, and they wouldn't like tell you like, this is bus stop blah 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 blah. So even if you're not Korean, they actually, even if like you don't speak a word of Korean, you still understand and you still can go around like pretty easily. So that was amazing, a very good like culture shock, I would say. And also safety, I feel like Korea is just like heaven, like especially for a Brazilian. I remember going around in Korea like, I don't know, 1 a.m. by myself, like in the streets, and it's okay. It's amazing. That part was amazing.
And the cleanliness, I bet it's like also from another world.
Yes, yes. I mean, in some parts it's not that clean. I've heard many people saying
Uh
that
huh.
Japan is way better in that sense, but
Uh
Korea
huh.
is still like, they have an amazing system. And I feel like the best thing is because they recycle a lot. Like the recycling culture in Korea is just amazing.
Yeah.
And they are very, strict when it comes to like putting like dumping trash away.
Yeah.
And you have to, for example, buy like trash bags. So I don't know how it works in the US, but for trash bags you have to buy the specific type of bag that you want for that specific type of trash. Yeah,
Yeah.
so for example, you pay not really for the bag, but for the amount and the type of trash that you want to dispose. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
larger the bag, the more expensive it will be. And if you try to like not use the correct bags and just do whatever you want, they will find you. They
Yeah.
will find you.
Wow.
They,
Yeah.
they will hunt you, which
Has
is
that
really
happened?
good. Sorry?
Has that happened to you?
Not to me, not to me, but I've heard like many people saying that sometimes they like look over your trash and they'll find like receipts and anything that can point out to who the trash owner is, and find that person and either like find that person or just like make them, I don't
Yeah,
know, punish them somehow. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's super interesting. I guess it's like you said, it's a lot of these things are rooted in their history, and there's like
Yes.
this really strong sense of ethics and respect for the
Yes.
environment and so on. So that's really cool. And I just wanted to add a comment because you were mentioning how like things are different there, like even more of like food, and when you mentioned kimchi. Um, because I've never been to South Korea, I've never been to Japan. I've always wanted to, actually, like even more China. I've always
Oh.
had the dream to do like a year in Shanghai and work or something like this.
Oh, amazing.
It's amazing. And like,
Yeah.
but I was thinking, like I've been living here for so long, and here in the United States, more specifically in Boston, we're exposed to a lot of that. Like to this culture. Like we have Korean markets, we have Vietnamese Viet markets, we have Chinese markets. I actually love going to H Mart, which is like a Korean market. They have one in Central Square, which is like near where I hang out, and
Oh.
they have all that awesome stuff, like the packaging. Like I'm a huge person in design, and I've always loved the way, like, Koreans and Japanese people, they design their products. It's so interesting, right? So
Yeah.
I think that if I went from Boston to South Korea, I would still have a cultural shock. But I guess based on how diverse things are here, I think we would kind of like have a preparation. We would get there. It would be shocking, but we'll be like, okay, I kind of like have experienced a bit of this. And also, my first year studying here, my host brother was from South Korea. So I
Oh, so
got to
you
learn
have
a
some
few things there.
experience. Come
Yeah.
on, you have some
Yeah.
experience.
Oh, I got to experience a few things. Like I mean, nowadays, like if I go to a Korean restaurant, I will always get like a bibimbap or like kimchi. It's so good. I love it.
Those are amazing, really. I miss Korean food so much, guys. You have no idea. And like you said, I think your culture shock wouldn't be like as big as mine, because in here, like even like today, I can't find any Korean restaurants around. Like any nothing Korean related, or I don't think any other, even for other Asian countries, I think we don't really have like that many options here, just like Japanese and Chinese. Brazil, I feel like Brazil is kind of still developing that sense. But for you, Victor, I feel like you should totally go. I mean, you already have some experience. You already know like someone Korean who can kind of like teach you a bit about the culture and how not to embarrass yourself like I did in terms of like trying to hug people. You already like the food, so
Yeah.
yeah,
I know
you're
the
halfway
age
there.
thing, like there's the whole age thing on how they count people's age is so different, right? So
Yes,
it's so interesting. It's just so interesting. The more you learn, the
yes.
more you're like, I need to know more."
Yeah, that part about age is just amazing. Like I never heard of anywhere like that where they count like, because you're already born with like 1 year old. And so you don't turn like, you don't get older on your birthday. You get older 31st of December, after midnight. So that's when everybody gets older. So I mean, only for documents they will use like your birth date, but other than that, like for all your social cycles, they will always use like your Korean age. That's how they call it, your Korean age. So be
Yeah.
That's so
prepared to get
interesting.
older if you're there.
That's super interesting, really. Like, honestly, I think that we should have just a podcast in itself to talk more about Korean culture and your experience, because I think we could stay in this topic for hours. I think, in fact, I
Yeah.
think there's many topics in this conversation that we could stay in for hours, because I,
Yeah.
on the other hand, I want to dive deep. And at another moment, I want to dive deep into international relations. I want to understand, of course, like your work there, and the you talked a bit about the thesis. And I just wonder now, after all of this experience, and of course your background in international relations, which I love, by the way. I like, I have so many friends that love international relations, are working in these fields, and I think it's so, like, such cool work. Um, how do you see everything that you've learned, like, abroad and with this background, like, fitting into approach and helping you in like where you are today and now? Like, how has it brought you to now?
I see. Well, I I don't know if you guys remember, but I mentioned about my first internship opportunity, which was in the Office of International Affairs of my first
Yeah.
university, you know. So that was kind of like my first experience with international education, you know, dealing with exchange programs, exchange students, and sort of kind of like understanding the importance of international education for people in general. And I feel like I have a like this topic specifically is very like important and just dear to me because I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had all the amazing opportunities that I had, you know. And I understand that I'm super blessed because none of these opportunities were like acquired with my own strength. Of course, I always studied hard and I always like did my part, but like in terms of like financial, you know, capabilities, that didn't come from my family. So many institutions and many people helped in that regard, and I'm truly thankful for it. And I know the difference it made in my life, you know, the experiences I had abroad. I know that they brought me where I am today, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't, you know, meet the people that I met and stuff like that. So this is why I feel like I'm very passionate about international education in general and why I wanted to just build my career in this area. And of course, it wasn't always like this, you know, because I'm almost like in my 30s, but in my during my 20s, I changed my mind quite a few times, I feel like. And I was kind of like wondering what I should be doing. And I only now I'm kind of confident saying that I love working with international education, which is why I am at Approach, you know, working at Approach. And like you asked, like how it helps and how it brought me here, I feel like being somewhere, working somewhere where I can like be honest about the product or the service that I'm kind of, you know, selling, that I'm kind of like telling people, okay,
Yeah.
this is good, you should do it, you know, is something that I really wanted to do, you know, because I think it would be just too hard to work somewhere that I truly don't like believe in what I'm saying. And I know for a fact that, like I told you guys, English was the first step for me, right? And English was actually the requirement for all the scholarships that I got. If I didn't study English, like even if my English wasn't amazing from the beginning, or even if, you know, it was a requirement. So actually I think about it quite often, you know, if what if I didn't study back then, what if I didn't, you know, study English, what if I didn't choose international relations as my major, I wouldn't be here today. So yeah, I feel like working at Approach is kind of like a result of
Yeah,
all these
definitely.
choices and all these opportunities. And yeah.
Yeah. It
It's
makes.
a full circle. It really is. Like it I think that I'm sorry, Vienna, I interrupted you, but I think there's like a beauty. I mean like we're all Victor and I were both international students and have that type of background as well of like kind of taking opportunities abroad and hopping on them. And I think that the beauty of this lifestyle is that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, even if it's studying or working or even visiting, like what you grab from being able to adjust to a new culture, to like become part of a new environment and feel like you can be part of this environment and also be part of an environment back home and wherever you want in the world. It's like such a beautiful like ecosystem to live in. And like I
Yeah.
like how you say it, like you believe in it, because at least here at Approach it's kind of like we enact something that we've lived ourselves, we've
Yeah.
experienced ourselves, you know. But yeah, V, of course, I'm sorry about that.
No, yeah, just to kind of like pick up on that. And it's like it's really amazing to see kind of like how it makes sense, you know. Not just the passion, but of course the experience, and definitely like the way you communicate, like how you make perfect sense of everything, you know. And I do see how the cycle kind of like closes, and I think it doesn't necessarily close it. You definitely find many different opportunities, after, like
Definitely.
whenever you have your time of growth and expansion. But I wanted to point out one thing. Northeastern here in Boston is one of our partners, and they have one of the best international relations programs here in the United States. And I'm
Oh,
not saying that maybe you want to do like a grad degree or anything, but maybe you could teach there, because I do think with this type of experience, a lot of times it is the type of experience that a lot of people here in the United States, more specifically, one of the things that I see here in Boston is that a lot of institutions, they're trying to transmit this international sense, this global sense of like how it is to actually to live with different cultures, to learn, absorb, and respect, and coexist, adapt to these changes of like whenever you have a high flux or small flux of immigration or not. I do think that a lot of times people here value these things a lot, and because they are the future. So I think you should, be very. I mean, you definitely are. You should be very proud of yourself, and you should think of the opportunities here. Joining us here, and not just seeing through Zoom and being actually physically in person in Boston.
yeah. I mean, first of all, I totally like what you guys are saying. This is something I think very often about. Like I think what Dana asked me about, like how many international students there are in Korea, right? And for my
Yeah.
degree specifically, because it's international relations, and our degree was 100% in English, so we are people like we are so diverse. Our grad school is just so diverse, and like Victor mentioned about how you learn about how to coexist like with different cultures in a truly global world. I feel like that was the best part during my degree, because like in a debate class, for example, I actually had a class, was called something like current issues, current like political issues, something along those lines. But I just know it was like a debate class, like all the way. And when you have like a circle with people like from different countries and different like continents, and just talking about, I don't know, governmental repression, and then you have a Chinese person talking about how they can, really access Facebook from China, and how you see like maybe a Latino person saying that's an absurd, and just like, that is just so interesting to see, and that's just amazing. And it truly helps you like in many different ways, and not only talking about political stuff, but just like I feel like every aspect of life, like even foods, even I don't know, everything is just changes you. And when you come back home, that never leaves you. That kind of like perception never really leaves you, and you're just like, I don't know, it just really changes you. It's even hard to explain.
I know what you're saying. And no one can,
Right?
oh, sorry, you can keep going.
No, no, no. Please, please, please go ahead.
I was just gonna put the cherry on the cake and say,
Oh, please.
no, no one can take this away from you. And that's the best
Yes.
part. No one can steal. It would always be here. And whatever you go, whatever happens in your life, you always keep that. And that's the best thing. It's an investment.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. I mean, if you can do it, like, even if it's not for studying, for anything, like, people should go abroad if they can. I mean, of course, I was privileged to have the opportunity to go, and I know like majority of the world population doesn't have, this opportunity. But I feel like if people are in a way in a position where they have it, they should take it, like definitely. And just like you said, we can really put a price on it. I feel like the experience is just priceless, and the people you meet, the experiences you have, it never leaves you. But what I really wanted to say is that at the same time that I love the idea of being abroad, it's funny because after being abroad, I value even more my time here in Brazil. So I learned how to value Brazil even more, to the point that after kind of like, I think personally, like Victor, you was like telling me you should come. I'm like, I really want to stay. After being abroad for a few years, I feel like kind of like this cycle of my life is kind of like closed. And it was truly like the best years I've had so far. It were like the years that I spent abroad. But I feel like right now, after coming back, I really can appreciate way more, Brazil, Brazilian food, Brazilian culture, and especially my family, being around my family. So I feel like I want to be abroad, like traveling and doing everything, maybe 1 month or two. But for living, I think I just want to stay.
I love that. I think that's like I think that's a realization that's super important, you know? Like I love that honestly. Like I hadn't heard that before, to be super honest. And I'm an ex like I grew up as an expat, so that usually means that we move around every 4 years to different countries. And
Oh, I see.
yeah, so like I literally I never felt like anywhere was my home. So it's like I love to hear this because it's like maybe like for example in my case, if I went back home to Chile to live there again, which funny enough it's what's happening with my family right now, maybe I could
Mm,
find myself again within this country, you know. I think that's such a beautiful concept, and I think for everyone that's listening to us, like going abroad doesn't mean that you don't stop being someone when you're like when you leave your home, you know. You take who you
mm,
are everywhere with you. So you can bring Brazil to abroad, but you can also bring abroad to Brazil, and you can bring
exactly.
like that's the beauty of really studying abroad, is that sometimes you realize, wait, I miss back home. I love
Yeah.
my feijoada com arroz, and I want to eat that
Yeah.
the rest of my life. Like, and I think that's gorgeous. I appreciate that. I really do. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes we go abroad like to find ourselves, to kind of I always felt like I was missing something. And when I finally went, I'm like, yeah, that was amazing because it actually helped me to like just figure out that I have everything I need back home, you know?
Yeah,
So going abroad, I feel like it's helpful also because of that. It helps you to just treasure more the things you already have. So I think it can only benefit you, you know, going
yeah.
abroad, it can only bring you benefits, really.
It's a
It's
win-win.
amazing.
It's a win-win.
Yes,
I
Exactly.
get that.
Yes.
definitely win. And I mean, like, just to add up before we wrap up, definitely, like, it's really really refreshing to see your perspective on this. You know, it really is, because first of all, that's one of the first times that I see people kind of like, look, I went abroad, I saw what I had to see, and I just feel like I love where I come from. And I mean, like, you should always love where you come from, right? Because that's something that
Yeah.
you can never change. And I love where I come from. For example, I'm Brazilian,
Yeah.
Recife, Nordestino. I love that, you know? I love
Yeah.
that. But I do think that, like, what you said will kind of like resonate in my head for a bit, because I've been living here for 10 years and I've never really felt like, I always feel like I miss my country, you know? But I've
Yeah.
never really had this relation of like feeling really connected to my land, and you
I
know, kind of
see.
like seeing that as, okay, that's home, home, really home. It is home, but it, you know, I guess I have more than one right now because I've been living here for so long. So thank you for sharing this. It does help, and at the same time, I hope it helps other people too, to kind of like make them think a little bit.
Yeah. But I also think this is something like it's super personal, you know, like
Yeah.
it's kind of
No,
even
yeah.
hard to compare, right? I don't know because I'm scared like of because I just said that I feel like
No, no, don't worry.
some people might be comparing themselves with me, but
No.
that's
Never.
okay.
No, I think that it's like all of these perspectives are super valuable, Rebecca. And like as we were saying, like we love seeing this because sometimes it feels for us that like when we talk about this, it's like we're telling people when you leave, when you go abroad, you are like escaping something, but you're not escaping anything. That's the beauty of it, that we don't need to
Exactly.
escape anything to gain from somewhere else. They can both be
Exactly.
equally beautiful, you know? So I
Exactly.
really
Exactly.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
And
yes, of course. Sorry.
no, 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 please go ahead.
No, no, I was just gonna say that like we really appreciate that, and like it's valuable, and I think that it's important for people to hear, you know, that the students that are coming here, that um, you don't need to think of like coming to study abroad to the U.S., for example, as a place where you're finding something better, because I think there's always better in all the places that you are. You can always find the rich good that you can, you know, cultivate for yourself.
Yeah, it's like that thing, like the grass is always greener on the other side, but not
Exactly.
always, not always, you know. And
But
you can,
is it?
Exactly.
yeah, you can always make your grass really green, fresh, good looking, well trimmed, as long as you want, right? So,
Exactly.
but yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah, totally
awesome.
agree. Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating, for sharing your story. I think that this has been one of the longest podcasts we've recorded in a while, and I honestly, it's like all the information here can be can truly be insightful and help a lot of
Oh,
students. So hopefully a lot of people will get to know your story. And of course, we know that it's your perspective of the world, but a lot of times it's always okay to mix and match. It's always good to remix, and people
definitely.
add your perspective a little bit to their own, and they reflect on it. It's a healthy thing. So it's much appreciated, and we hope to see you around.
We really do. We will definitely will for everyone watching, we'll definitely try to get Rebecca to a couple other podcasts. We'll convince her because we really love these topics and we would love to talk about international relations, more about South Korea and Korean culture, and just in general. Like, I think the beauty of this, and I've said the beauty like 1,000 times today. I'm so sorry. I am poetic today, right? Basically, like the reason why we love approaching your future in this podcast is because we get to hear genuinely like why people do what they do and what has brought them here. And I think that's something that we don't get to like we don't get to see like we can only get to see it when we like inquire for it and when we go and grab it and ask people to share with us. So that's why it's so cool to see all of these perspectives and to bring them back because they all are part of like who approaches what approaches and what like this lifestyle means, you know. But yes, without further ado, I am going to be closing out the podcast really quick. But Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic, incredible. Like we're so happy with this, and we're super excited to show it to the world. Um, but without further ado, I am going to give the outro. V, would you
Yes.
like to?
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Really, it was amazing.
No problem, Rebecca. We'll see you around. And, if for anyone who's watching, Rebecca is one of the newest additions of the Approach team. So you would
Yay!
definitely see her around and
Yeah.
around our Zoom office, remotely or not, who knows?
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. Really, it was amazing.
Thank you, Rebecca. You have a
Thank you,
great
Rebecca.
Bye bye.
bye bye.
It was a pleasure.
You too.
All right. So now you can wrap up.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to Approaching Your Future with your hosts, Dana and Victor, where we discuss different cultural aspects of life in the United States. And we'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. As you've heard before, we have changed our podcast date from Friday to Tuesdays. So do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at approach_USA to keep up with all the latest updates and follow us on TikTok, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook. When I tell you that we have social media platforms, we really do mean it. We have 1,000 social media platforms and we want you to follow them. So thank you so much for tuning into Approaching Your Future. Thank you to the amazing Rebecca, who was our guest today, and Victor. Thank you so much, V. It was great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone for watching. And yes, put that on your schedule. Every Tuesday we'll be here and we'll be sharing more stories, more insights, more information that hopefully will make your life better here in the United States or keep yourself dreaming. But yeah, thank you guys and have a great night.